Good morning, or on the East Coast, good afternoon, I guess. Happy New Year, happy 2022. It is time for the Ohio State Buckeyes to play in the Rose Bowl. I am Tom Orr. He is Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeScoop.com. Tony, every time we get to come out and cover a game at the Rose Bowl, I think, this is a pretty good way to start a new year.
It is, and as we were setting up the shot for this, Kevin and I were talking, and it's like, well, it's almost more important to get the mountains in the background than it is to have us in the shot. And really, you just come in here and it brightens up your day. Fortunately, the sun is very bright today, and it is shining. That was a concern for about the last few weeks, Tom. You've been watching it every day because that makes total sense.
Yes, as soon as this they had the 10-day or 2-week or whatever extended forecast, I started nervously checking this isn't going to be one of those rare cloudy New Year's days in Pasadena, is it? And it rained a bunch here this week. It rained 3 of the first 4 days we were here, and it wasn't here's a little sprinkle. It was it was raining all day long. Had all sorts of people who are from out in this area say, I can never remember it being this cold and rainy. We covered a practice. The last practice we covered was on, Wednesday? And we were out there, and it was legitimately cold. You were legitimately happy to get back on the bus at the end of it. This is genuinely unpleasant. And then it's New Year's Day, and it's going to be 60 degrees and sunny because it's the Rose Bowl. That's what this place does.
And I know I can just feel I'm going to get sunburned today, just probably during this show, because it's beaten down right now.
Yeah, it is. It was funny. Earlier this morning when we were at the hotel before we came over here, there was this long conversation about, on College Game Day, about how, the kids today and the opt-outs and why are the children, why do the children not love football the way that we did back when we were playing football? And, I think that there's so much conversation about the playoff, and it's all about the playoff, and it's all about the playoff, and the playoff is the only thing, we're watching the Peach Bowl earlier this week, and they cannot stop in the final minutes of a close New Year's Six bowl game. They cannot stop talking about the playoff. It's well, why doesn't anyone care about anything other than the playoff? Well, I have my suspicions. But if you were a college football fan and not just a college football playoff fan, this is it. This is it. This place right here. This is unlike anywhere else in college football. There are just a bunch of crappy antiseptic NFL stadiums where it's oh, look, our dome is slightly different. It opens in a circle instead of sliding off the end. And our TV is slightly bigger than the other people's TVs. And it's yes, that's great. They're all basically the same. And then there's this.
Although I will say I saw a roof this week that opens with triangles.
Ooh, well, I take it all back.
I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and New Year's Day, just growing up as a kid, I grew up in the Northeast, so I was not, a Midwestern Big Ten person, but growing up in the Northeast, you watch the Rose Bowl. And it's cold, and it's snowing, and it's crappy outside. And then at 5 o'clock Eastern, Keith Jackson's voice comes on the TV, and it's always sunny, and it's always green, and the mountains are beautiful, and it's just oh, okay. And as soon as after the sunset happens, I always will forever get this pang in my stomach, oh crap, I got to go back to school tomorrow, because that was every year that was the thought when it started getting dark at the Rose Bowl. But we don't have to go to school tomorrow, and we get to be right here. So this is pretty good.
No, for me it was always the Citrus Bowl, and then that would lead into this one, and it's what better way to spend a day doing nothing and eating whatever crazy leftovers you've got going on. This has been a long time coming for Utah. It's not necessarily been a long time coming for Ohio State. And talking all week to all of the players, the narrative that this means more for Utah, it was true, but that doesn't mean it doesn't also mean enough for Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think you get here and you see the place and you see that if you haven't figured it out by the time you get here, you figure it out when you get here. But when they do get here, I guess we let's start with the fact that we don't have the official availability report yet. However, we can kind of run through the people who we didn't see at practice this week, which is probably a pretty good indication of who is not going to be playing today. We did not at any point see. I guess we can start with the opt-outs. The opt-outs were Garrett Wilson, Haskell Garrett, Chris Olave, and Nicholas Petit-Frere. And we saw Chris Olave at practice, so I guess there is some minuscule possibility that he wakes up this morning and decides, I may play after all. It doesn't sound like that's very likely, but it's at least theoretically possible. The other three guys we haven't seen them. They're out. Guys we haven't seen at practice this week. Defensive tackle Antoine Jackson. Defensive back Marcus Williamson. Defensive back Seven Banks.
Linebacker Cody Simon.
Yep. I think those are probably four people who I would not expect to see today. And the last practice we were at, the one that was cold and raining sideways, we saw Javante Jean-Baptiste kind of working off to the side with a trainer at one point. So we'll see. That may be a very minor thing, but he was the only person that I saw. Normally when you're watching practice, sometimes you'll see guys working off to the side or guys in limited contact jerseys. There was no one like that. It was either you were practicing or you weren't. He was kind of the only exception.
The absence of Marcus Williamson is, I don't know if it's the absence that is interesting. It's just, well, it is, but how that position is going to be used, or how that, not even position, that 11th spot on the defense is going to be used, because there's been talk about Court Williams, there's been talking about Cade Stover as the third linebacker, probably multiple stuff, including somebody's going to have to do what Marcus Williamson does. Is that Cam Martinez when they go to a nickelback, or is Court Williams the nickelback that he's going to have to defend the slot, or does Ronnie Hickman move down? Where's Lathan Ransom in all of this? There are so many moving parts for these spots, and I don't know how many answers. I'm interested to see what was settled in camp. Did Court Williams move past Lathan Ransom in this kind of role? Who knows? Is Lathan Ransom in front of Bryson Shaw right now? I don't think that's a possibility, but we're going to find some things out in this game, at least personnel-wise, future-wise, which is also interesting moving forward.
And, it is kind of interesting to me that what you see today may or may not really be indicative of that, because this is a different offense than you're going to see in a lot of the Big Ten. You're going to see a lot of spread, a lot of passing, a lot, go 4 wide, spread you out. That's kind of at least 3 wide. That's kind of the trend in football. That's not what Utah does. Utah is much more of a power running team. Good news, the ref mic works. Utah is a power running team. You're going to see a lot of 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. You see a lot of tight ends. This is if you want to put it on a Big Ten scale, this is much more of an Iowa or a Wisconsin than it is like a Purdue, Purdue,
or even
Penn State, Michigan State. Yeah, I mean, this is so. Cade Stover, and being in I think we're anticipating we're going to see at least some to possibly quite a bit of 3 linebacker, with Cade Stover being one of the guys who's starting potentially at the Sam spot. Most of this year they were in a 4-2-5 with 2 linebackers out in the field. Next year, Jim Knowles runs a 4-2-5, so probably a lot of 2 linebackers out in the field. So, we may see something today, and it doesn't necessarily mean this is what it is going to be moving forward, but this is a very interesting snapshot in time of, they are going to play teams like this next year. This is a way for them to, you will maybe get a sense for how they plan to defend them.
If Cade Stover is that Sam, I really feel like he's going to be used to go forward rather than defending some of these tight ends.
Yeah.
Because they do throw to their tight ends. 2 of their top 3 receivers are tight ends. They have 21 touchdown catches all season. Everybody, 13 of those are between 2 tight ends. So I don't know that Cade Stover, even though he is a tight end, is equipped to defend tight ends at this point. He is a great athlete, but he's been playing linebacker again for about a little over a month, and I don't know how much of the coverage issues they're going to even want to try with him. So if he's in there, are they using him to attack and just create havoc and create chaos and just make something happen?
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how they use him. But I'm with you in that. Go, see ball, get ball. This is someone who has not played linebacker for the vast majority of this season. Didn't play linebacker last season. I think the last time we saw him on defense was at the Fiesta Bowl, and he was a defensive end at that point. So that was 2 years ago. So, I think this is a little bit of a one-off with him, where this is a team that is going to be a physical running team. We need a big-bodied linebacker to kind of combat what Utah is going to try to do. Potentially be able to shed blocks from tight ends and that kind of stuff, and then go get Tavion Thomas to the ground. So yeah, I would anticipate a lot of him very close to the line of scrimmage, You don't want him in space necessarily against tight ends. But the other linebackers, I don't know that you want Tommy Eichenberg in space against tight ends, and I don't, Steel Chambers has again only been a linebacker for 6 months or so, so I don't know that there is necessarily a great option for them in space against tight ends, which then makes me wonder, okay, how do you combat that?
Well, you combat it the exact opposite way Ohio State did it in 2018 at Iowa. Whatever Ohio State did in that game, don't do that, and don't allow that to happen. But yeah, and that's where I'm sure they've been prepping all camp long, bowl camp, to handle that. However, it feels like if an offense can only beat you, not only beat you, but if their strength is tight ends, that limits their number of points. That puts the ball in the Ohio State offense's court to where, if we score 34, is that enough? Because how many points can you score when you're throwing 15 passes to tight ends? Like, that limits you automatically. Now, it may keep the chain going, keep the ball away from Ohio State and limit their possessions by 1 or 2 or something like that, but it still limits you. Doesn't mean it eliminates you, though.
Yeah, but it also may create longer possessions. If you're not hitting big plays, if you're kind of going chunks down the field in 6 and 8 and 10 yard chunks, it makes it harder to convert. It's much easier to score a touchdown with one 60-yard, 70-yard touchdown pass than, you have to keep the chains moving, you have to stay on schedule, you have to keep, one bad play, one holding penalty. That one holding penalty kind of blows you up if you don't have a big play offense. And Utah really doesn't. I mean, they'll hit a big one every once in a while, but that is really not what they do. We have helicopters flying overhead. It is officially a Buckeye Weekly episode. We have lots of loud noises. The blimp is a lot quieter up there.
Don't tempt anything.
Oh, the humanity.
Exactly.
It is to me going to be very interesting to see how much Utah can convert third downs, because it feels like that's going to be a big element of this game. Is if Utah is 5 for 15 on third downs, that is a game that Ohio State wins by 3 touchdowns. If Utah is 10 for 12 on third downs or 10 for 13 on third downs and they're keeping the chains moving, that's a game where Ohio State potentially doesn't have the ball very much, and that's where Utah, I have said all week, it feels like an absolute inevitability to me that Utah is going to score between 27 and 31 points. So if Utah is converting third downs and holding the ball for 38 minutes in this game, does Ohio State have enough possessions to get to more than 31 points? Because it feels like if they get to 35-38, they're winning this game. If they score 24, 27, they're probably not.
And if those possessions are limited, that's going to force Ryan Day to maybe not want to take field goals and maximize each possession with touchdowns, which means a 4th and 4 from a 26-yard line or something like that he's going for, and that could be some short turnover on downs, empty possessions, because he knows we don't have as many possessions as we normally do, so we have to get as many touchdowns as possible and maximize the points as often as they can. So the coaches will talk about, we just have to play our game. But you also have to realize your game is in the context of Utah's game, and that's what you're operating in. And the third downs, they convert 49% of their third downs this year. If they're 33% of that's going to be huge. And if it's the other way, it's just as much of an impact.
Yeah, if they're 33%, they're losing. If they're 75%, they're probably winning. And then if they're in the middle, then
we'll see.
Then it's going to be a real interesting football game. Going forward on fourth down is and we know this is one of my hobby horses.
Yes.
But going forward on fourth down, I mean, Morgan Scalley, the Utah defensive coordinator this week, you talked to him about the importance of what is Utah thinking? If Ohio State's sending the field goal team out there, what is Morgan Scalley thinking? Oh no, 3 points.
Nope. He said inside the red zone, 3 points is a win. They don't even worry about it. It's the same as nothing. As long as you don't give up a touchdown, he tells his defense, don't even worry about the field goal. You're fine. You've done your job. If you hold a team that gets into the red zone, especially an Ohio State team that gets into the red zone to 3 points, that's a win every time. They'll take that every time because he said you're not going to lose by giving up field goals. And we've seen that where it's, Ohio State is sitting with 26 points on 6 scoring drives, and It's not efficient, and that is one thing that Utah's offense is they are efficient. So they figure, I think it marries well. It's just, the red zone defense holds up, and Utah just does what they do. And what are they scoring? They're scoring like 35 points a game this year. They're giving up 20. So it's not like they have this huge offense, but it all works together well.
And, if you go into a drive with the idea that once you get down inside the 30, inside the 20, it is 4-down territory, you can call plays differently. Because if it's third and 8, and you're going to go for it on 4th down, if it's 4 or less, well, then you don't need to call. You can throw one short of the sticks, and then you convert on 4th down. Now, we have seen this not work for Ohio State. There's been lots of stuff that hasn't worked for Ohio State when they've tried it. Kick lots of field goals, didn't work out great at Nebraska. It worked out okay. They scored 26 points. They did kind of the same thing against Penn State, where it's like a lot of field goals. But then against Oregon, they went for it a lot, and they didn't convert, and that didn't work out either. So, you have to convert some of these 4th downs, but you're better off missing one and scoring 1 touchdown than kicking 2 field goals. That is a pretty that is 7 is greater than 6. That is just math.
Yeah, I do wonder if field goals are more valuable in this game for Ryan Day, just because I think maybe there was some fear of the Oregon offense in terms of the explosiveness.
Yeah.
Whereas they don't necessarily probably have that fear of the Utah offense. So if they give up, say, 27 or 31, what's a couple of field goals in terms of scoring for Ohio State? I think they feel like you score 4 touchdowns, 2 field goals. I think once you get past 2 field goals, then it's kind of like you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I think a couple of field goals is fine, just to keep some momentum or to cut a lead or to grow a lead. There's also context.
Yes, sure.
Where it's kicking from the 2 or something like that.
Right. Yeah. If you've got it at the 2-yard line, just go for it and try and punch it in. If you are down 2 points in the last few minutes of the game, kick your field goals. Then okay. It is context dependent. Oh, good. Sloopy's here. They are just testing all sorts of audio stuff.
They
so you're
played
hear
just enough of that song for us to not be able to monetize this.
Quite possibly. So the other side of the ball for Ohio State, or I guess staying on that side of the ball and getting a little more specific about what we're talking about with the offense. C.J. Stroud, it feels like we're here. Our insiders are kind of hearing stuff that C.J. Stroud has had a very good bowl season. Utah has a couple corners who we think are probably going to be out. Probably. Their 2 outside corners are going to be out. Their slot guy, Clark Phillips, former Ohio State commit, he's going to be playing. He's going to be matched up with Jackson Smith and Jigba all day, probably. But the 2 outside guys, maybe not there, or at least not 100%. But for Ohio State, you're missing Chris Olave, you're missing Garrett Wilson. If Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson are playing in this game, then that to me is there's the difference. Ohio State's going to score 42 points, and Utah won't be able to keep up. So then now you've got Marvin Harrison and you've got Julian Fleming. Fleming is kind of filling in for Garrett Wilson. Marvin Harrison filling in for Chris Olave, and then Emeka Egbuka will probably be in there some, but he plays the same spot as Jackson Smith and Jigba does. Maybe they go 4 wide. I mean, that's a possibility. But, it is going to be very interesting to me to see these 2 young Ohio State wide receivers who have really not gotten a whole lot of opportunity throughout their careers now get that opportunity on a very big stage against players who are not necessarily top of the heap. That to me suggests if they play well, they could have a big day.
Yeah, the other concern, to get back to the red zone, is Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are very good red zone receivers. You have to fight for the ball. You got to come down with it in traffic. If it just you throw to Marvin Harrison and gets knocked away on a 3rd down, it's like that would have been a catch for Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson. So now you're left with a field goal because of their absence. So, but I still think those guys are going to be fine. They're going to be targeted quite a bit. They will produce. They'll get the ball in stride. They are athletic. This is what they do. They make plays in practice when given an opportunity. The only reason they haven't been given many opportunities in games is because they have 2 first-team All-Americans in front of them. And sometimes those guys can be annoying and they stay on the field because they're so dang good. And now this is the best opportunity any of these other guys have ever had. This is something that you have to think it's unfortunate we didn't get to talk to them.
Yeah.
Because they would probably be going through the roof right now, which is also something Kevin Wilson, I asked him about his excitement, and he's like, I'm more concerned basically about their excitement, and they will have to calm down. Because you said it, if they don't understand, once they get into the stadium, you kind of understand. You get a better understanding. And I think you get here, and the nerves just go even more, but they have to settle. And maybe do you go right at them to calm them down? I think we've talked about that in the past, or do you let them settle in a bit? And I don't know if there's a right answer.
Yeah, I always think of a young quarterback coming in, the best, potentially a bundle of nerves. The best thing to do is give them a short, easy throw to start with. I think that might be the answer for some of these receivers too. Give them a short, easy throw, get the ball in your hands, get hit the first time. It's like, okay, now I'm out of the wondering, looking around, and now I'm in the game. That feels like that might be the best way to do it. On one of the other absences that we've been talking about is Nick Petit for a left tackle, which normally left tackle is missing would be like, oh no, that is a tremendous problem. That's an incredibly important offensive line spot, and he was fantastic this year. But Ohio State also has another left tackle who is a multi-year starter and All-American.
Was he second-team All-American? Certainly all Big Ten in the past.
Yeah, at least an All Big Ten offensive left tackle. Just to go ahead and slide him over, it's fine. And you move Matt Jones into the starting lineup at left guard. I'm interested to see. This is a team that did not run the ball well at Michigan, and one of the things that people have kind of pointed to is you kind of have 4 tackles in that starting offensive line with Paris Johnson playing right guard and Thayer Munford playing left guard. Now you've got Matt Jones, and Matt Jones is not, he is not quite as nimble as some of those tackles, but he is
good.
Big. He is big. He is good. He is strong. He's a little bit mean. It seems like maybe there's an opportunity for them to run the ball better than they have in the past.
Yeah, I think so, and that's the mentality that they're looking for, where you bring the guy in who wants to run block, and that's his nature. That's what he's always done. He's always been an interior guy, and has always been focused on going forward rather than moving backward like a tackle. So, I don't know the numbers in terms of what the running game is when he's in there compared to when he's not. I think a lot of people believe it's better. I don't know if that's true. If that's just the assumption that everybody likes to go with. But I think having some stability in terms of it's just probably going to be those 5. So I don't know how many times in the past 2 months where it just stayed the same 5, because a little bit of a ding, a little injury here or there or whatever, and they have the freedom of movement. And sometimes maybe that freedom of movement actually constricted the running game.
And it's going to be interesting to see how TreVeyon Henderson looks in this game as well, because he got off to a great start this season, had a monster day against Tulsa, and looked very, very good, and then just kind of tailed off a little at the end of the year. And you wonder how much of that is, line play, how much of that is, play calling and Ryan Day getting a little bit pass happy at times. How much of that is maybe hitting the freshman wall a little bit? That's always a possibility for a freshman, especially a guy who didn't play at all last year. He's now had a month off. You would think you're a little bit fresher for the Rose Bowl. You would think you're going to have, potentially have some bigger running lanes with Matt Jones out there now. This seems like, I'm not thinking he's running for 290 yards today, but this seems like this is a game where TreVeyon Henderson could go for 120, maybe 150 yards. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. You have 2 running backs with 150 yards, one on each team today. But if TreVeyon Henderson is at 125, 150 yards, and Tavon Thomas is at 125 or 150 yards, but Ohio State has can get the passing game going, that seems like that's if TreVeyon Henderson and Tavon Thomas basically have the same number of rushing yards, that seems like that's probably pretty good for Ohio State.
Yeah, I would agree. It tells me that Ohio State has established the run and has made the passing game even better. And I do expect good things from TreVeyon Henderson in this one. You look at Utah has been good against the run, but they have had some bad games. I think Oregon State rushed for like 269 yards against them. It's been interesting listening to some of the questions from the Utah media to the Utah players and coaches, the defensive side, saying, basically everybody knows that Oregon State has the best offensive line in the nation. What did you learn going against the Beavers to prepare you for this? And I'm just listening like,
is that
when did that vote happen? And so you look at what Oregon State was able to do to them. I'm going to say Ohio State, if they don't have the best, and maybe they're close number 2 to Oregon State in terms of the ability to run the ball. And TreVeyon Henderson looking certainly to make a mark. I don't think many people are talking about him right now, and certainly not talking about him enough, where he could, this could be the springboard to next year where everybody is talking about him. Because they talked about him early, then he kind of disappeared, at least from the narrative.
So I'm guessing we have, are we starting to pile up some questions? All right, so let's... okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
Here.
Yeah, okay.
I think everybody is curious your thoughts on the receiver that's going to step up in lieu of Wilson and Olave.
Okay, so the receiver...
Tom, we need to embrace debate. Okay. I say it's going to be Julian Fleming, and I expect him to be way better than Marvin Harrison Jr.
Tony, you fool. How could you pick Julian Fleming when Marvin Harrison Jr. is the son of an NFL Hall of Famer?
I went alphabetical.
That's true.
No, okay. I do expect Julian Fleming. He's got the most experience. He is the more explosive player. He can be used deep. He can be used to move the chains. I'm thinking Marvin Harrison, and if I'm wrong, come back at me. I'm thinking he's a chain mover. I was impressed the few times we got to see him after the catch, because he does not move like a 6'4", 210-pound guy. So maybe he can do something more with that. But I'm going with Julian Fleming, and it's funny to me that you think it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr.
And Julian Fleming is a very good pick. Julian Fleming, of course, a couple of years ago, number 1 wide receiver in the entire nation in that recruiting class, and has just not been able to stay healthy. It's not that he hasn't been good. It's just that he has never been able to stay healthy long enough to get on the field and have real opportunity. He's flashed at times. He had a pretty good game in the Big Ten championship game last year against Northwestern. But he's someone who you just, anytime you talk to anyone who's been at practice, it's just like you'll just hear like, oh yeah, he's doing this stuff that's like it's just Matrix level stuff, but you haven't really seen that in games yet. So I am going to be very excited to see Julian Fleming potentially get a full game worth of reps at that starting X spot. And he's someone who fits the profile of the guy who is maybe thinking about a transfer if you came in and you're a very highly touted player and you haven't gotten to play. And that's less so true probably maybe because of the context of why he hasn't gotten to play, because it's injuries, but it still has to be frustrating. If you have, if he comes into the offseason now with a 5 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown in the Rose Bowl, well, then the attitude is probably very different, and the conversation around him is probably very different going into next season. But yeah, I also think, we talked a little bit about Harrison, we talked a little bit about Fleming. It's also maybe worth talking a little bit about Emeka Egbuka, because he's not someone who is going to be a starter, because he is kind of behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. So that's he's not necessarily going to be a starter, but he's someone who, again, that's someone who you have seen him on kickoff returns with the ball in his hands doing some real impressive stuff. So, if he can, if he gets on the field, get him in space. If he's matched up with Clark Phillips, that's a tough matchup. If he's matched up with, if you can get him on a linebacker or something like that, like, oh boy, that you might really have something there. You saw him against Akron, had an 85-yard reception, something like that. It's in there for him. It's just he might be my pick, honestly, if I thought he was going to get as many reps as the other two guys.
No, I would agree. And Jackson Smith and Jigba does not need to stay in the slot. He can move outside, and those two can play together. He doesn't have to go to the bench, so Egbuka can come in.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the PUSD.
Mark or Adam Baker's asking starting linebackers today.
Starting linebackers today. I think I'm going to go with Steel Chambers at the will, Tommy Eichenberg at the Mike, and Cade Stover at the Sam, if they do start with 3 linebackers. And I think they're going to start with 3 linebackers. I think you're going to see Cade Stover starting at linebacker in the Rose Bowl, which is, think back to the spring. And I tell you, Ohio State has made it to the Rose Bowl, and their starting linebackers are a guy who's in the running back room right now and a guy who's in the tight end room right now. And the guy who's a senior captain is not going to be starting. And oh boy, don't let me tell you what happens to the other 2 senior linebackers.
And the starting middle linebacker is in his third year and had never really played before.
Yeah. I mean, this is an incredibly inexperienced linebacker unit, which is what's going to happen when you have 3-4 really long-term linebackers like they had last season, and then the guys who were the guys behind them, 2 of them left, and one of them has kind of lost his starting spot to Steel Chambers.
And then Mitchell Melton has been injured all season. Cody Simon has actually been injured all season long as well, and trying to play through it. So it's not been the best year for the linebackers, but there are circumstances at least behind it.
DK, what new starter will use the opportunity to catapult his career?
Which new starter will use the opportunity to catapult his career?
Kyle McCord.
I think I'm going to steal your answer and say Julian Fleming, because like I said, I think this is an opportunity for him to really kind of change the narrative around his. Tony's quit. That's very sad. Anyway, the show just got better. Addition by subtraction is what I say. I think Julian Fleming is a good pick here, because he is someone where, like I said, you have a big game here, you score a couple touchdowns, you change the whole narrative around your career, you change the whole narrative around your season. Then then you're going in next year going, okay, now they've got, you have at least potentially answered one of the questions at wide receiver, and. There's no depth of no lack of talent in that room, even without the guys who are gone. It's just a matter of which of the incredibly talented, athletically freaky young wide receivers are going to get the opportunity to take that step.
Well, and the thing with Fleming, as I think we mentioned this on another show, next year is his contract year. If he wants it to be, it definitely could be. I'm going to go with, and this may not be starters, but guys who will play starter minutes. I'll go with either Tyleik Williams or Court Williams. Either of the Williams brothers will...
Not brothers.
Not, of course not. But it is a brotherhood, Tom. The Williams brotherhood. And whoever it is, it could be both. I think both guys you'll see something from in this game. Tyleik Williams will have to play more than he's ever played, which is all Ohio State fans have been asking for since the first time he stepped on the field and was creating havoc as a defensive tackle. And then Court Williams, we've heard talk, and coaches love him. Matt Barnes has never seen a harder worker. Ryan Day called him a future captain before he ever practiced for Ohio State. This might be an opportunity for him to be the other guy with Cade Stover in terms of what this defense is going to do. So I'm going to go with one of them, and I think we already know Tyleik Williams is going to be something next year, so I'll just go ahead and say Court Williams.
Yeah, and if we were picking offense, defense, I think Tyleik Williams would have been my defensive pick. He's a little bit the same way as Julian Fleming. He's obviously, this is just his first year, but there was some frustration from times from him where maybe there was some practice questions and just he wasn't getting on the field as much as he wanted to. When he tweeted #FreeTyleik, well, he's going to be free today, and let's see what he does with the opportunity. Because again, this is a lot like Julian Fleming. You're going to change, probably the thoughts and the feelings around your season if you have a big, if he comes in and has 3 tackles for loss today, 3 tackles for loss, and has a good game, the opportunity is going to be there. They're going to be trying to run at him probably or near him, and if he can be a disruptor in the middle of that line of scrimmage, well, against a pretty good Utah offensive line, that I think is, that can really change, the conversation where it's like, well, yes, he did it, but he did it against Akron, so, well, now you're doing it against some better competition.
And these games are where all of the national media and regional media is watching. And so if you stand out, that's how you get noticed in terms of the preseason accolades and the postseason stuff. You almost have to go into a season being known or have something happen during the preseason, like, stepping in front of a bullet, like Haskell Garrett did, to gain some notice and notoriety. But if it's Tyleik Williams with 4 tackles for loss or something like that for today, he'd just explode. Julian Fleming, my bold prediction was 111, 12 yards receiving,
something like that,
105. Yeah. I really do expect him to be good today. Jackson Smith and Jigba will be fantastic once again. I'm assuming. I don't think he can't not be fantastic.
That sounded grammatically incorrect, but I know what you mean.
Kevin?
Larry Pilgrim, who happens to be a Utah fan who loves all the coverage, says, are OSU fans worried about playing so many non-starters?
I think you have to be concerned. I mean, I think this is, if you put the 4 opt-outs back on this team, I think you've got, if you've got Haskell Garrett in the middle of the defensive line, I think that helps if he's healthy. If you put Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave back out there, I think that, he's a Utah fan. How would you feel with 1 to 2 banged up / unavailable outside corners going against Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson? I suspect the answer is not tremendous. So, yeah, I think it has to be a concern, because if you go around the field and you look at the recruiting rankings, it's this is just an objective thing, but it's just the recruiting rankings for Ohio State. The talent is just infinitely higher than Utah. Now, the Utah coaching staff does an incredible job coaching these guys up and squeezing, first of all, of identifying under the radar talent, but also squeezing every bit of ability out of these guys. Because you look at Utah's talent, and it's like they are not. I forget where they are in the 24/7 talent composite, but I bet it's not what their team ranking is. I bet it's not 15th or whatever it is. So if you had a veteran Ohio State team going against a full strength Ohio State team, I think you go into this game feeling very differently than you probably do with some of these younger guys, and it's a big stage. Sometimes young guys get nervous. Like I think back to Paris Campbell his freshman year, like wide open pass and just dropped it. It's like, well, Paris Campbell turned into one of the best receivers statistically in Ohio State history, but sometimes when you're young, you're nervous. Yep. You get the heart gets going, the adrenaline gets going, and it's like, well, gets a little harder to squeeze the football.
Yeah, short touchdowns become a 3 and out just because of that.
El Suzabo, did you guys have fun watching Michigan get kicked in the nuts last night? It was glorious.
They played?
The game happened.
I did not see much talk on Twitter from Michigan fans, so I wasn't sure if the game had been played yet.
Yeah, that game, I think those 2 games went as closely to what I expected as any games have this season. It was just like, I don't. People were talking about this being a real, like, boy, this is going to be a barn burner. It's like, how is Michigan moving the ball against this Georgia defense? Like, walk me through how Michigan is moving the ball against this Georgia defense, because I don't think they can run it, and Georgia's vulnerable downfield in the passing game, and they hit one to Roman Wilson, and I think that was kind of it. And like, okay, you got your one big play, and then there's 59 minutes and 45 seconds of game you also have to do something in, and they really kind of couldn't.
I didn't see any of the post game. I wonder if Cade McNamara was asked about J.J. McCarthy basically being the guy they went to when they needed to move the ball and they needed offense, and essentially McNamara, it seemed to me, got benched. And this wasn't just McCarthy getting his normal snaps here and there. It looked like Jim Harbaugh turned to him because they had no other option. And we've said that he needs to be the guy next year, because if he's not, there's no reason for him to stick around, because McNamara will be a redshirt junior next year, which means he's expected to be starting in 2023 as well. McCarthy's not going to stick around to 2024 to become a starter. So I think we were talking about springboards. That may have been J.J. McCarthy's springboard. I don't know how high the high dive was on that.
Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of the when Ohio State came out to play USC in the Coliseum in 2007. 2008. And Todd Beckman starts against USC, and it is very clear that this ain't it, Chief. And so they bring in Terrell Pryor, who was incredibly raw, not ready at all, but also could do stuff Todd Beckman could not do. And it's like, well, you kind of need to do this stuff. And some of it's not going to go great, but at that point, the writing's on the wall. And then Terrell Pryor started the next week, and Todd Beckman never started another game at Ohio State. It feels like, that's what they should do. J.J. McCarthy gives them a higher ceiling further down. Like, Cade McNamara is what he is.
Yeah.
And
got him to the playoffs.
Yeah, he did. But it was like, it took a lot for him to get them to the playoffs. But he got them to the playoffs. But it's like, that's the ceiling. Like, we've talked before that there are a couple different levels of talent in the nation. Ohio State is in that top layer of talent. That doesn't mean they can't lose to a team the level below them, but it means they have enough talent potentially to win the national championship. Michigan is, Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, some of these recent Oklahoma teams. They're all teams that just, like, they're good. They're in, they are legitimate top 4, 5, 6 kind of teams, but they don't have the depth of talent, especially in the trenches and at the skill positions, to be able to really, beat the teams that you have to beat to win the national championship.
Neil Harris kind of dovetailing off that one. Buckeyes have the same talent on defense as Bama and UGA. What's the difference? Coaching.
Yeah, I would agree. They were out schemed at times this year, very, very badly, and you hear how predictable Ohio State's defense is, how easy they made it for quarterbacks to be prepared for pre-snap and post-snap, and it was there's just mistakes made defensively in terms of the coaching and the scheme, and so many square pegs, round holes, and none of it worked. And we'll see if some of the square peg and round hole has been adjusted here, and as maybe we see some of Jim Knowles' defense, some tweaks here and there, which would certainly be a surprise to Utah.
Yeah, and that's something that, obviously Ohio State feels that it's coaching because they've got a new defensive coordinator coming in. So the question was put to Ryan Day this week, how much input did Jim Knowles have this month? And he has multiple times this month answered that question in a no, not at all, no. I'm going to be interested to see if that's true, because there are certain stuff. I talked to Ross Fulton earlier this week on one of the morning scoops, actually the morning scoop that dropped last night, and he talked about the fact that it's if you see one of those defensive ends standing up right behind the nose guard, that will be your Jim Knowles was here moment.
Yep.
If you see Ohio State cover zero blitz, like not leaving a deep safety, you're bringing everybody, that will be a Jim Knowles was here moment. And you could see that against Utah, because with a team that is not bringing a ton of, that does not have a ton of big playability, that's the kind of team, the whole point of keeping a safety back is you don't want to give up a big play. If this is not a team that is real prone to big plays, well, maybe you'd be a little more likely to try that.
Yeah, no pass plays over 50 yards for Utah. I could see a perfectly called screen, however, going for over 50 against an all-out blitz.
Yeah.
Dave Rice with one specifically for Tony. Which Big Ten or bowl game press box has the best catch-up?
You know what?
Penn State has that ketchup creamery.
Well, no, I was just wondering if at the Cotton Bowl, if there was any Whataburger spicy ketchup there for us at all, because that's, of all the bowl trips or any game trips, that's the best ketchup. I think we could all agree with that. I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, I like a spicy condiment. We did a Scoop Eats segment yesterday at Philippe's, the French dip place, and they had a good spicy mustard. I like a good spicy condiment. So yeah, it's good. If you must ketchup, spicy ketchup.
Just got a super chat in from Jason. Bill Davis wasn't in Jim Knowles' wedding, was he?
Yes, that is well struck. Yes, Bill Davis was not in Jim Knowles' wedding, as far as I'm aware.
Right. No. We should do some research. Let's go ahead and call it a show right now.
Yeah.
We'll get back.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume Gene Smith does no longer allow that.
Yeah.
Like you can hire whoever you want, but I need to see the wedding registry. Like I need to see the guest list. I need to see all of this, because if I see any names on there, I'm going to do some cross-referencing, and don't let that be stingy, Tom.
I will do my best.
And then you got to do all of that. Just find that sweet spot of defensive assistants who have not been the best man at your wedding.
Sue Zabo says she just got some kimchi ketchup. Haven't tried it yet, but doesn't that sound intriguing?
I don't understand kimchi, so I'm not so much.
I think it's a K-pop group.
Okay, then I am intrigued. Yes. Have you seen the mayo chup, which is just ketchup and mayo, like swirled like the peanut butter and jelly, and that you just squirt it in a bottle? Heinz does it. Mayo chup. Are you ill now? Have you eaten breakfast today?
I have.
Eggs and mayo chup, Tom. Probably big in Canada. Sorry, Kevin.
I was going to say, Bill Cook with the very general question of what do you think will happen?
Well, Tom, we'll have some mayo chup. No, I have picked Ohio State to win by 14 because I think the offense is still very good. I do think they'll be able to run the ball. I'm confident that Julian Fleming, Marvin Harrison, I'm actually really confident in C.J. Stroud. Now, give him some time to throw, and this is still, again, as I've said, it's still a Pac-12 defense. So my lack of respect, maybe clouding by judgment, as it generally does. But I think Ohio State will be able to run. They'll be able to throw. They have been challenged. Their manhood has been challenged. Their toughness has been challenged. So they will give as much effort, I think, as they have, unless things go poorly, then you wonder, like, does this team have just a quit? Do they just like give up?
We have seen this team start slow, and if they start slow, it generally stays slow the whole game. Doesn't mean they lose, but they will. If they score early, they put a couple early scores up. It's like, oh, okay, it's gonna be one of those games, and then it's over before halftime. But when they kind of come out and are a little sluggish, and you punt on the first drive, and then you kick a field goal in the second drive, and it's the end of the first quarter, and they got 3 points. It's like, we've seen that game this year. We've seen that game a bunch this year, and sorry, I'm trying to read the skywriting planes above me. Something about AMC. We love the stocks. Oh, okay, I get it. It's a Wall Street, yes. Invest carefully in 2022, friends.
I only take my investing advice from the sky.
It's smart. We are starting 2022 with some bits, that's for sure. I think like I said earlier, it seems almost inevitable that Utah ends with 27 to 31 points. Like, they're going to move the ball well enough. They're not going to put up 50. They're not going to put up 40, but they're going to end up in the high 20s, low 30s. And then to me, it's just a matter of how does Ohio State do in the red zone? Because they're going to move the ball up and down the field. Is this an Oregon game where they put up 600 yards of total offense and only 28 points? Or is this going to be a game where they're cashing red zone touchdowns? If you go 5 for 6 in the red zone scoring touchdowns, you're winning this game.
Yeah.
Because then you're at 38, maybe more than that. If you go 3 for 6 in the red zone scoring touchdowns, and you've got three touchdowns and 2 field goals, and you go for it on 4th down, or you miss a field goal, whatever, the 6th time, you're losing this game. And I have to see Ohio State score red zone touchdowns today in order to believe that Ohio State will score red zone touchdowns.
I think they can go 3 for 5 as long as those 2 misses are field goals, and
that still gets you to 27. Which
right, but I have Utah scoring 24.
Okay.
So I have to stand by
Okay.
my original prediction.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I was the only one who picked Utah. It's not that Ohio State. It's not that there's not a path to victory for Ohio State here.
I mean, they are favored.
They are favored. They have more talent. They have, even with the opt-outs, they have more talent on the field than Utah does. But there's a lot of young talent out there. There's a lot of young players playing in their first really big game. Let's see what it looks like.
As I've said before, we're probably not talking about the loss of Haskell Garrett enough.
Yeah. I mean, Utah lost 2 of the guys that they would really not want to lose in those outside corners. Like, that is a spot where Ohio State is going to try to attack you. But Ohio State has young wide receivers in those spots, so it's not quite as devastating as it would be with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson.
A lot of people still talking about the catch-up. Some people talking about cryptocurrency. G-Fish, I think this will be more of an Ohio State-Michigan State game.
What about catch-up currency?
Catch-up coin. Like,
to the moon! I'm sorry, what was the question?
G-Fish thinks this will be more of an Ohio State-Michigan State game.
I would be shocked. I would be shocked if this was an Ohio State-Michigan State game. Michigan State was a team that had a lousy pass defense. It was not literally the worst in the country, because the way that it was the worst in the country was a flawed metric to measure it. But they were a below average pass defense, and Ohio State lit them up. Utah has a decent pass defense, and they also don't have Chris Olave. They don't have Garrett Wilson. So, maybe Julian Fleming goes off for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns today. I mean, it's possible. And maybe Travion Henderson runs for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like, that's possible. But I don't see either of those as real likely. An Ohio State blowout would be kind of what you're predicting, which is 38-24, 42-28, something like that.
I think if that Michigan State game happens, it's because Ohio State is going to have to go out and earn it, whereas Michigan State allowed a lot of that with their secondary. And I think it's going to be tougher. It's not impossible, because you just have to convert. Like, just pick up 3rd downs. Don't have any 3rd downs. Convert each time, and you score automatically by doing that. But it would have to be precision, execution throughout, and against a good defense, which just doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
We're at about 50 minutes. Let's go for 10, 15 more. I'm kind of scrolling back. Mark Williams wonders who Clark Phillips III may cover.
Clark Phillips is their slot corner, so unless they move him outside, I would expect to see him on Jackson Smith and Jigba all day long.
really didn't buy me any time there to find another question.
I will say on the depth chart, he is listed as a starting corner, outside corner, but the number 2 nickelback. But depth charts, Tom, as we know,
Well,
they're suggestions.
Who would you feel, who is the most important person to have your number one corner on?
Well, exactly. And the thing is, he has experience playing in the slot.
Yeah.
So he's not one of these guys where you move an outside guy into the slot to cover a team's best receiver who is in the slot. He's comfortable there, so why move him outside? Do something where he's not comfortable against a lesser receiver.
Yeah, I think that's an easy decision. That makes a tremendous amount of sense, and I think that was what when I had Josh Furlong from KSL on the Morning Scoop, that's what he was anticipating they were going to do.
Somebody asking about Marcus Hooker. We haven't heard much about him just because he's still with the team.
Yeah,
he was at practice.
Yeah, he's here. He's still at practice. He is just not really in that rotation at safety right now. He is with the team, but he's just kind of been a non-factor this year, and he missed a bunch of time with the suspension earlier in the year. Didn't end the last season tremendously well.
Nope.
Kind of slid down the depth chart there. Then missed a bunch of time this summer, so it is not really a surprise that he's been a non-factor. But he's here, he is present, but he's not someone I'd expect to see a lot today.
It does tell you how bad things were last year, how much better they've gotten, but they're still not great because he was starting last year.
Yeah.
And then went to like 0 snaps on defense by the end of the year when they absolutely needed as many safeties and defensive backs as they could get. And I think he was held to just special teams duty.
Somebody asking if there have been any celebrity sightings by us while we've been out prowling around.
I mean, I went to an LA Kings game, so I saw a bunch of hockey players.
I have not seen any celebrities outside of the OSU beat, which are all celebrities to me, except for Kevin. Thank you. I am number 1.
I'm not on camera, so nobody knows what I did.
I think they know. Let's give the audience some credit, Kevin.
Another super chat in from Jason. Is Utah a poorer but better dressed, better looking, smarter Michigan?
Certainly better dressed and smarter and better looking.
I think Utah presents a lot of the same challenges that Michigan does. I think, and I think I might have tweeted that right after the Ohio State-Michigan game was like, oh boy, I don't know that I think this Rose Bowl is a tremendous matchup for Ohio State. If the team from the Michigan game shows up, they are going to lose this football game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's a lot of the same things. I mean, power running, a lot of short throws, not a lot of stuff downfield, a lot of short throws, tight ends, that kind of stuff. Tough physical defense, going to get after you, very physical defensive line, maybe a little vulnerable in the back of that defense. I mean, it is very, very similar, I think, to what Michigan is.
I think Michigan's offense is more explosive.
Yeah.
Because they attack more that way. But, yeah, very similar styles and what they try to accomplish. Although, when I asked Zach Harrison about the compare them or whatever the likenesses, didn't really have any good answer. Didn't really think there was much similarity. And then I think it's because I was like the 7th person to ask him that question, and he was just done with the topic.
Elsu Zabo, if you had to pick the guy on the last drive to win the game for us, who is it and why? Obviously, it's David Boston. He's done it here before.
That's true. David Boston is a good pick. Jake Ballard would be a good pick. DeVere Posey would be a good pick. Brendan White, I think, would be a good pick.
Yeah, not bad.
If it's a Tyvis Powell, Tyvis, yeah. I think I'm going to go with Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Travion Henderson's a good answer. But I mean, if you're going to throw, I'd put it in Jackson Smith and Jigba's hands because he's the guy who's the veteran. He's the guy who has shown that he can make that tough catch. I mean, he had some just circus catches up at Michigan. I think he's the guy who, if the chips are down, he's the guy I think I would put my money on.
I'm also looking for Travion Henderson to have more catches than normal. And he's a guy that had 23 catches this season, 2 catches a game, same as Jeremy Ruckert. Those 2 guys could be more involved because of the loss of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. But yes, if you need a yard, need a first down, need something, need a big catch, you're probably drawing it up for Jackson Smith and Jigba, unless they think they can lull people to sleep with Jeremy Ruckert.
El Suzabo chiding me for taking players from not this year, so I told her I knew we were joking there on that one.
You're going to get us in trouble, Kevin.
He is the worst. You're right,
I really am.
You're number 1, Kevin.
I'm still really thinking about that kimchi ketchup. It's kind of got me all messed up right now.
Kimchup.
Ugh. Horrible.
Kimchi?
I'll ask one right now. We kind of touched upon a few things. Tom's interested in seeing what red zone is, but what's the one key that, by looking at just the number and not anything else, that you know Ohio State have won the game outside of the final score?
Utah's yards per carry.
I think. Well, yeah.
Yards per play.
Can I take the Ohio State Michigan statistic? Which team runs for more yards per carry? If Ohio State runs for more yards per carry than Utah, Ohio State's probably winning the game. If Utah runs for more yards per carry, I think that tells me then you're putting a lot on the young receivers if that's the case.
But if that's Utah's offense, they should run. I think Ohio State running for more yards per carry means more than Utah, because Ohio State also has the passing game, to where they just have more of that. Whereas, so they have a more diverse offense, so they can, Utah can best them in that, but Ohio State still can throw for another 350 yards and raise the yards per play over Utah.
I think that's exactly what I was trying to get at. Is Ohio State, if Utah's running for more yards per carry than Ohio State, then you're putting a lot on those young receivers, which doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means you're putting a lot on those young receivers.
Mark Williams, does Ruckert have a big game today? Technically, he's the second most experienced receiver.
My 3-point bold prediction today, I believe, was Jeremy Ruckert with 7 catches to get to 30 on the year. I think he can have a big game, but what is a big game? 4 catches? I mean,
four
catches.
Four catches. Yeah, 4 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown would constitute a big game as a tight end.
He's averaging 2 catches a game.
Right.
So.
It's just I will. I think I have assumed that Ohio State is going to throw to the tight end enough times and had Lucy pull the football away that I'm not ever going to be like, what's going to happen this game.
Well, and he could have 2 catches on the first drive and then finish with 2 catches for the entire game.
Sure.
And it's just, you throw to him early, that way the defense is like, oh.
Yeah, we got to cover this guy.
And then now you've freed up some other areas for the younger guys.
But it is possible that this is today is the big payoff of the 30-year-long con of Ohio State forgets the tight ends.
That's one hell of a slow game.
Yeah, well, hey, you got to be in it to win it.
We're at about an hour, so we're kind of starting to wind down on the questions. Larry Pilgrim, when Utah plays high-efficiency, talented passing games, they play zone. They won't man up. They may mix it and try when OSU starts to drive, but won't in the red zone.
Well, and if they're playing zone, that's where the precise route running of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave will be missed, and you're going to have to get that out of the young guys. And if there are some throws where it looks like, C.J. Stroud threw behind him, don't put all of these bad throws or incompletions on the quarterback, because it's a lot about the timing, it's a lot about the route being run. You do wonder, can they stay patient? They have been able to stay patient all year long. This is a patient passing game, but the real patience, Tom, would just be like not giving up on the run.
Yeah, and that'll be something that I'm interested to see, because Ryan Day over and over and over. I feel like I've said that's going to be something I'm interested to see about 50 times in the show. But there's a lot that I think is really intriguing about this game. But Ryan Day over and over, it feels like we hear him say, I think we gave up on the run a little early. And he's a former quarterback coach, passing game guy. I understand. I get it. Offensive line coaches want to run the ball. Quarterback coaches want to throw the ball. That is the nature of, this is my nature, as the punchline to an old story goes. So I am going to be interested to see if he's willing to run the ball and commit to run the ball. Because if he's willing to commit to run the ball and they can run the ball, then that potentially opens some stuff up in the passing game, where if Utah has to commit more people, well, then there are fewer people in that zone behind them, and then or you force them to play man because you just don't have enough.
1, 2, 3.
All right, wrap it up. Kevin's giving us a wrap it up, so I guess it's time to wrap it up.
Wrap it up, Tom.
8. Spoiler, 9. Yes, nailed it. That will do it. That will do it for our pregame show live from the Rose Bowl. I may have another pregame show coming up in a little bit. Go ahead and hit that bell if you are not already subscribed to our channel. I may have a secret surprise pregame show. Not 100% guarantee, but that may be happening in the next half hour, 45 minutes, something like that. So hit that bell, subscribe to that channel, and you get notified if we do that. Also, hit that thumbs up button. We really appreciate that. That helps other folks find these shows when we do them. We will, of course, be back after the game as well for a post-game show. There should be a whole heck of a lot to talk about. I am really excited for this football game. The music is starting. We're going to get out of here. See you guys after the game.